Hold on, hold on.
Yana's giving me a camera thumbs up.
Okay, we're ready.
I can hear an echo through you, Christine. There we go. Now I can't. All right, guys. Wow, decent audience. Welcome to my Lisp programming class. If you want to follow along, you're welcome to try. It's not gonna be too fast, so you should be able to. If you are trying to follow along, go to this website, github.com/walters-and-wolf-glass. That will bring you to the Walters and Wolf Glass GitHub repository, which has a bunch of files in it. If you scroll down, there's AutoLISP lessons here, and when you click on that, this is my repository for this lesson and maybe others, who knows. Click on it. We're going to do lesson 1 here, and this lesson 01 MD, that's a markdown file which has the outline for everything that we're going to go through. So if you want to follow along later, this should be enough information here for you to do it. It goes through everything. I went crazy last night and wrote a whole bunch of text to describe everything. If you want to, Christine's recording this right now, so this will also be on YouTube at some point. And also, if you want to download everything, you can go back to this AutoLISP lessons at that website. And if you click here on code, there's an option here to download zip, which will download every file in this repository, and then you can explore the files yourself. All the resources you need are for this lesson, for lesson 1, are in the lesson 01 folder. All the code that we're going to be writing is in this solution folder, but I'm going to write them, with you guys during this lecture. But if you want to see the answers, if you're working on this later, you can see what I wrote here. And then in here, these are drawings that we're going to be using to do this. There's nothing fancy in these if you open them up. But that's all provided in that zip file. So all you have to do is go to github.com/walters-and-wolf-glass. You have to spell out the word "and." There's a whole bunch of actually other source code, not the takeoff program or anything like that. Some of it's private. Right here is all of the maps for this offsite, but it's private. But you can go to AutoLISP lessons, and there'll be a bunch of stuff there. GitHub is an amazing site where people who write code can publish, basically, more or less, publish their source code to everyone in the world, and then everyone can contribute to that code. So it's really, really amazing. And a lot of work nowadays is being done on GitHub. So let's start here, lesson 1. All right, so our goals for this are we're going to learn how to automate repetitive tasks in AutoCAD, first using a script, and then we're going to take that script and use it, or kind of remake it into something in AutoLISP that has a little more interactivity. Okay, you don't need any programming experience for this. I'm assuming 0 programming experience, so we're going to start from the very beginning. You will need AutoCAD, any version. So if you don't have that running, just start it up now. And then you'll need a text editor probably. You can use Notepad, which should be on everyone's computer. If you have something else that's fancy, Notepad++ or Visual Studio or VS Code, you can use any of those. Or you could just use the Vl Ide command in AutoCAD. You could even use Word, but you have to be careful with Word. You have to save it into a plain text file. So any one of those will be fine. I'm going to be using VS Code because I feel like I can't type at all unless I'm using VS Code or something like it. So I'll be using that. But I'll show you how to get to the Vl Ide editor in AutoCAD if you want to try that out. So here I am in AutoCAD. All you have to do is type in, let me get this sharing screen thingy out of the way. Hide. Okay. Vl Ide in the command line. And that will open up this Visual Lisp text editor. And then you can hit this new file button, and then that will just open up a window for you to type in text. Okay, you can type in code, you can type in whatever. So you can use that, or you can use Notepad, whichever one. Or if you happen to have one of these other ones, you can use it. Like this is Visual Studio Code here. All right, that was long-winded. Where was I? Okay, so we're going to start off with scripts. Scripts are just text files with the, oh, I forgot to mention before we get too far into it. If you have a question, just raise your hand and line up over by the microphone, and I'll try and address your questions as they happen. I don't like saving them all to the end because it's a little less dynamic for everyone. So, all right, so scripts. They're just text files with the SCR file extension. And they contain the text that you would type into the command line to perform a task in AutoCAD. So we're going to use a script to do a very simple task, which probably has happened to some people. We're going to make a script to change the drawn by text on a set of AutoCAD drawings. If you look at the folder of the drawings that I gave you, they all have a drawn by text that just says X on all of them. And assume that you were drawing, you were going crazy, right? You're making details, making elevations, and then now you have to print and you realize, oh, I forgot to put my initials on every single sheet. Oh, darn it. So we're going to do that with a script. I figured that probably has happened to someone. I saw Sahar put up a heart. I'm assuming this has happened to her. It probably happens to Jumpstart more than it happens to anyone else, but that's what we're going to do today for the script. So you can read this if you want later. We're going to, when I start writing a script, the first thing I like to do is sit in AutoCAD and figure out exactly what I have to do in the command line to accomplish the thing that I want. With scripts, you're limited completely to the command line. So if you can't do it with just the command line, if you need to pick up your mouse at all, then it probably can't be scripted, or at least not easily. So if I was doing this manually, right, I would open up whatever file, I'd go over here into Paperspace, I'd probably double click on this, and then I'd put in my initials and then click out. A lot of that seems like you can't do that in the command line, but you can do most of that in the command line if you know how. So I didn't actually know how to do this offhand, so I did a couple Google searches to figure out how to do it. And I found one thread that said that you can use the change command in AutoCAD to do it. So let's try that out. Let's try, go to the command line, go to change. I never use this command. And then it asked me to select objects, so I'm going to pick this. Now I am using my mouse. We'll figure out how to do that part of this script later. Click on that. Enter. It asks me to change point or properties. I found that if you just hit enter, and then it asks for a new text insertion point, I'm going to hit enter for no change. Change the text style, enter. Rotation angle, just going to hit enter to keep it the same. And there we go. There's the prompt that we want. Enter new text. I'll try put in my initials here. Hit enter, and there we go. Command line only, change the text. So that's the command that we're going to script. I'm going to hit undo so we can try that out. So start up your favorite text editor, which I have here, Visual Studio Code. You can do this in Notepad or that Vl Ide editor that you saw earlier. And you just verbatim type in everything that you typed in into AutoCAD in the command line. So what I did was I did change, and then I hit enter. Like I'm being very deliberate with the enters here. You have to be very deliberate with spaces and enters. If you did type an enter in AutoCAD, you have to put it here. If you put in a space in AutoCAD, you have to put it here. So I did change, and then I picked the object, right? Which I am not sure how we're going to do that yet. I'm just going to put pick at this point. Once I've picked the object, I hit enter to tell it that I'm done. So let's split screen this. So change, enter, select object. This is where I cheat and I pick. And then it's still asking me for more objects, so I have to hit enter, right? So I'll put an enter over here as well. Specify change point or properties. At this one, I hit enter. Over here, I want to hit enter. New text insertion point, enter, enter over here, enter here, enter here, enter here, enter here. And this is where I put in my initials, right? So I'll type in my initials. And then we hit enter also after I put in the initials. And then the command is done. So this is my whole script. I just need to figure out this pick part. Okay, any questions so far on that? Sahar's clapping. Thumbs up. Thank you, Sahar.
Is there somehow in this
Oh, Celine, you're still spotlighted.
I have a
Yes.
question. Can I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
In the command, the Vl Ide, there's no number of lines in the text file. Is there somehow I can
I'm not sure. There might be some option in there, but there probably isn't. I have the line numbers showing because I'm a nerd, but you don't need those there at all, unless you find that useful somehow. Like maybe it's useful to count the number of enters that you have.
Yeah.
Something like that, but I don't know if you can do that on Vl Ide, and I'm pretty sure you can't do that on Notepad either. Though I think Notepad tells you what line number you're on at the bottom or something. If you turn it on.
I see that on the bottom right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. It would be nice to have same as.
Yeah, this is why you don't use Vl Ide. Use something with a little more power like Visual Studio Code. And you can install Visual Studio Code without admin permissions. So IT won't block you from it. You could just go to do a Google search for Visual Studio Code and follow the links, and you should be able to download and install it without IT stopping you.
Okay, good.
All right, I'm gonna unspotlight you, Celine, so you don't have to worry about that. I forgot to unspotlight you. All right. So this picking thing, that used the mouse and it used a click. So I want to get rid of that somehow. And one way you can do that is by putting in a coordinate in AutoCAD. Like if you just type in a coordinate, it will pick that whatever's underneath that coordinate from the command line. So for this one, I'm going to use some coordinate around here, and my little coordinate thingy isn't really updating. So I'm going to use the ID command, which lets you identify a coordinate. So I'm going to use ID, and then I'm going to pick a point. I'm going to turn off my OSnaps and just kind of pick a point that would get this X. Like if I put my mouse here and I selected an object, I would get that X, that text value. So that is this point here. And all I have to do is type that into where this says pick here. So it's 2'7". I'm going to convert that all to inches, so it's all, oops. So that's 31.23-ish. Obviously, you don't have to be super accurate because of you're just kind of doing a mouse pick. Comma 2.43-ish. And that should put my mouse somewhere near this X, and that if I clicked, it would activate it. So I put in the X coordinate, comma, Y coordinate. Don't need the Z coordinate. Most of our stuff is all at Z equals 0 anyway, so you don't need to do that. And now this script is done. All I have to do is save it. So I'm going to do a save as. I'm going to put it in my AutoLISP lessons folder, and I'm going to call it my script.scr. So the important part here is that it has a .scr file extension. Over here, this is going to want to try and put a .txt after the .scr, which is not what I want. So I should be able to just pick no extension like that. You might have to say all extensions, something like that. Let's see what this does. I'm not sure how that's going to turn out. Ah, there we go. My script.scr. All right, so now I'm going to open up that folder, and we're going to try out that script. So I save this over here in AutoLISP lessons, lesson 1, my script. Right. So to run this, you can just, it's pretty simple. You can just drag this file onto your drawing area. And once you do that, wait, let me make sure that if this says X right now. Okay, that says X. Drag it over, and then the script should run, and you'll see that all this stuff happened in the command line, and you can see that my ZZP changed. Cool. Now, if that didn't work for you, there could be a lot of things that are wrong. Okay. One of the things is you might be zoomed in weird, right? If you're zoomed in like this, and then you ran that script, that coordinate point that you put might be right here. And if you put your mouse there and click, you're not going to get anything. So then the command would fail. So that's why before I ran the script, I just did a quick zoom extents. That way it's a little more fuzzy. If the pick point could be anywhere around here, and it's going to get the X that I started with. So that could be one of your problems. The other problem is you could be in model space. If you're in model space, this isn't going to work because there's nothing at that coordinate in model space. So some of the things we could do to make this script even better is make sure that it puts us in paper space, make sure that the tile mode is set to 0 so that we see paper space normally. Make sure, like, there's several different things, and I think I outlined those in the website here. Some things that we could change. Maybe I didn't. Anyway, but for now, as long as our file is in paper space and we're zoomed all the way out, then this script should work. And because it's a script, I can bscript through all of the files that I have. So I just did this 501 file, but now I can run this script on everything. So I can run the bscript command. Okay, it popped up in the other monitor. And then with the bscript command, normally it's pointed at the S drive for the scripts. You can click here for directory to change where it's looking. And for this, I want it to point at that folder where I saved our script. Right here. Here's my script. I'll hit OK. And then I'll just select all these drawings, not that first one because I have that one open, but. And now it should just cycle through all of those drawings and put my name in there. And now that I have this script, I can use it all the time, right? I didn't just solve the one problem that I had right in front of me. I solved this problem for the rest of my career, basically. I can run this script anytime I forget to sign something. All right, so, oh, it's on 503. It's taking a little bit to run here. So hopefully you can see the power of scripts, right? And of automation in general. It's pretty simple to write these. You just write down everything that you would do in the command line. If you can figure out, the hardest part is figuring out how to do it with just the command line sometimes. And then once you have that, put it in a text file, and then you can drag it over to run it. You can use the script command to run it, or you can use the bscript command to run it. Sahar, you had a question?
Yes. I was using Visual Lisp, and I tried to go back to change pick when we wrote pick, and I can't like delete what I wrote.
Not sure what could be going on there. See, this Visual Lisp editor, it's a little weird sometimes. Sometimes you have to go back into AutoCAD, cancel a bunch of times. Like if you have a command running in the AutoCAD window, it doesn't like you going back to this window. It like doesn't respond right away. So you might have to cancel out of any commands in AutoCAD that you're running and then go back to the Vl Ide window. Or run the Vl Ide command again in AutoCAD. Did that work? Maybe? This thing's a little bit of a relic of the past.
Yeah, I'm just gonna use notes.
Yeah, just use Notepad.
Okay.
Like this is more useful. This is less useful for scripts, more useful for Lisp, but yeah, just use Notepad. All you need is Notepad for this. I'm leaving it all very disconnected right now. If you get serious, I would probably go to either Visual Studio Code or to that Vl Ide and really work out the problems with it, because it's a lot easier in those two than it is in Notepad. Any other questions about scripts? Very simple script here. Hopefully it's useful to some of you. What kind of things might break this script? I mentioned a few, right? The file is saved in model space and you start bscripting through it, it's going to fail, right? What if you have a different title block? If you have a different title block, then this coordinate might not be right. So you might have to adjust it. If your name changes, you'll have to change this, right? You have to adjust the script to accommodate all these different things. Maybe there's no text there at all. Maybe someone went in here and just erased. Now you have nothing to change. Now you actually have to run a whole different command. You might have to run text, something like that, make sure the layer's correct, all kinds of weird stuff, right? So this script is very good at doing one thing in one specific situation, which fortunately for us happens all the time. But it is prone to breakage. It doesn't ask any questions of the user. So that's where Lisp comes in. With Lisp, you can write a whole new AutoCAD command to do exactly what you're looking for. And then you can build in logic to handle all of these different sort of error scenarios or different initials or different conditions, right? So that's what we're going to move into next. So let's just quickly, before we leave scripts, let's talk about the pros and cons. Pros, relatively easy to write. You can use bscript to script through multiple files, which is huge. Pretty much the only time I ever write a script is if I plan to bscript it. It's very rare when I write a script to not bscript it. And it automates simple repetitive tasks. Some of the cons, you're limited to the command line. So anything involving a dialog box or mouse clicks or anything like that, it might be a no-go. It can't ask questions. You can't pause for user input. You can't do any of that sort of thing. It's just the same thing every time. And you can't make a new AutoCAD command with it. All right. Romy, go to a microphone. No one else can hear you. Come up to a microphone. You have a question? Go up to a mic. Romy has a question, guys. No, you got to go stand behind the microphone, behind the podium.
How
There
do you
you
run
go.
this again?
There you go. Now we can all hear you.
How do you run this again? Just quick. So I already have the script, right? Then.
Oh, how do you run the script?
Uh-huh.
There's several ways. You can browse to where you save the script and then just click and drag it over into your drawing area and it will run. The other way is you could run the literal script command in AutoCAD. Let me undo back. Oh my gosh, lots of.
Okay, then that's it, man.
Okay, well that's
Don't
one way.
waste your
You can
time.
also run the
Okay.
script command like this and then pick the file that you want to run, or you can run bscript.
Okay.
Okay. Bscript automatically adds the save and the close and that kind of thing, the open, save, close thing. So
Hey,
you don't
Zach.
have to add that to your script.
Zach,
Yes, John.
how can we make it into a command, AutoCAD command?
You can't make a script into an AutoCAD command. You have to do it with Lisp, and that's kind of what we're going to do next.
Cool.
All right. So now we're going to get into Lisp. Quick background. Lisp, it's not, well, it is how some people talk, but in this context, it's short for list processor. And it was the second, I learned this a couple days ago, it was the second ever high-level programming language invented in 1958, which is, you don't even think people are programming computers back then, but apparently some smart people were. And Fortran was the first high-level programming language, and is invented the year before it. So Lisp is super old, but its descendants are still around, including AutoLISP. You might have learned Scheme in school. They tried to teach me Scheme in school as well. Clojure is actually a modern version of Lisp. I have no experience with Clojure, but I know it's pretty big nowadays, relatively speaking. So it's still around. So learning Lisp is still useful. There are still applications for it. But the one that you're probably going to be into is the AutoLISP part of it. So now we'll just move into the tutorial for Lisp. We made a script to do the drawn by text. Now we're gonna make a command to change the page number. Okay. So this is something you can't really script because the page numbers change all the time, right? Every page has a different number, so you can't make a script that just changes them all to like 5.01. It wouldn't make any sense. So this is where we need to start introducing logic, maybe a question to the user, like, hey, what page number do you want me to put here? And then it goes off and does it. Okay, so we're going to make a command called np, short for number page, using Lisp. Okay. So one of the nice things about Lisp, especially when you're learning, but I still use this all the time, is that you can type out Lisp code directly in the command line and see what it will give you. You may have seen me go to your computer and type out a bunch of code at the command line. I'm usually doing Lisp code there because it's so super convenient to just be able to go here and start typing stuff. You'll see when you learn other programming languages that they don't have anything like this. JavaScript kind of does, but other programming languages don't really have this where you could just kind of play around with it and see what happens and see what breaks, test something out before you do it. So we're going to try a few things here in the command line, write some Lisp code in here just to try it out, kind of map out what we're going to do with our command when we do write it, and then we'll go into Notepad and try and write it all out. Okay. So the first thing you need to know about Lisp is everything in Lisp starts with a function, and functions always start with a parenthesis. So in your command line, if you type in open parenthesis, you're basically telling AutoCAD, I'm going to be writing a bunch of Lisp code here. Okay. And then the first thing after the parenthesis is always the function name. So we're going to start with a real easy function. We're going to put a plus sign here. I don't know if I can make this any bigger, the command line. Options. I don't see any options for command line font size. Just have to live with it. So open parenthesis, I'm going to put in a plus sign and then a space, and then I'll just do 1 and space and then 2 and then close parenthesis, just like that. So this is a Lisp function. It's doing the plus function and it's taking a 1 and a 2 as arguments. and just adding them together. And when I hit enter, you can see on the command line, 3 pops up. Voila, your first little bit of programming. Everything in Lisp is built off of functions. Everything. You make functions with other functions. You ask for user input with functions. Everything is built off of a function. And it's always open parenthesis, then the function name, and then some number of arguments. It could be 0, it could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 20, and then a close parenthesis, and then when you hit enter, it'll execute that function. So there's a few other functions. You can probably guess what they are. This asterisk function. Let's put in 2 and 3. Any ideas what that might do? Multiply, right? So that just multiplies 2 numbers together. If you do a / and you do 2, let's do 8 and 4. That's just 8 divided by 4. 2. Okay. If you did divide, but you did something like this, 2 and 3, you might get some weird number. 0. And that's because we gave it 2 integers. I don't want to get into it too much, but we gave it 2 integers and it's giving us an integer back. And what we're expecting is a fraction. So if you just make one of these not an integer by putting like .0 to make it a sort of a real number, now it's going to give you a real number back, and it gives me 2/3. There's also other ones like sine of 1 is some number like that. So it's taking radians. That's why I can't just put 90. It's going to be some weird thing. Actually, it's off, but it's something. Or you could do cosine of 0. Right? Cosine of 0 should be 1. So there's a whole bunch of math functions. So notice some of these take 2 arguments, like addition, multiplication, division. Some of them take 1 argument, like sine. You could do sine of pi. Pi is a special symbol in Lisp that actually gives you pi, and it gave me some number that's really close to 0. Usually when I see something like that, I just say, oh, that's 0, because it's times 10 to the -16, which adds a whole bunch of zeros behind the decimal place before you see the first 1. So anyway, that's how functions work. Those are some simple functions. We don't need any of those for this, but that's basically how they all work. So again, I like to think of how I would do this manually in AutoCAD. Actually, before I do that, any questions about that? Simple functions in Lisp. You can just type them right into the command line. Super nice and easy. Okay. So our goal here is to select this and change it to a page number. So we're going to have to, the way I imagine this command working, and I like to kind of start with how I want it to work, and then see if I can make it do it exactly like I want it to work. So for this one, I want to make it so that I start the command, it asks me for a page number, and then I hit enter, and it just finds this text and changes the page number. Nothing, it asks me one question, what's the page number? And then it goes and does it, okay? So I'm gonna need some kind of function in Lisp to make a command to ask the user for a page number. I'm going to have to store whatever page number that they told me into some kind of variable, a little foreshadowing. And then I'm going to do some commands to change this text object in so that the page number matches. So the first one we're going to use is Getstring. So I'm going to do it again right here in the command line. Open parenthesis, always need it. Getstring. So Getstring is a function that that lets you ask the user for a string. And a string in programming language, in programming terms, is a series of text. It could be of any length, really. So I'm going to get a string from the user. That's kind of what they are going for with the name of this function, get string. And then after that, you can put in the prompt that you want AutoCAD to show to the user. So I'm going to start with a double quote and then say, please enter in the page number. And I'll put in a colon, double quote again, and then close parenthesis. You always have to close your parentheses in Lisp. Let me move my mouse so you can see it. So what this is here, this is one argument to the function. Just like we had one argument to the sine function, we gave it an angle and it gives us an answer. This one takes one argument, and in this case, it's a bunch of text. And you have to put the text inside of double quotes to tell Lisp that it shouldn't try and process this at all. It's not code. This is text. So once I hit enter here, AutoCAD will give me a prompt, and it's going to use the prompt that I typed in. Please enter in the page number. And then it just kind of stops and waits for me to enter in a page number. So I'm going to type in 5.01. And when I hit enter, this is the result of that function, 5.01. As a string, it has little text, little double quotes here that says that this is text. Every function in Lisp starts the same way. It has a parenthesis and a function name. And all of them also return a value of some kind. In the case of these math functions, the return value is the answer to the math function, right? 1 + 2 is 3. 2 × 3 is 6. Well, the result of this getString function is whatever the user typed out. So now we need to take that and save that in some way. Any questions about the getString though before we wander away from it? GetString's a pretty simple function. Wherever you put it in your code, that's where the code will stop and it will present whatever prompt you type out, and it will give back whatever they typed out for you to use in your code. Okay. The next one is the big one that you use all the time in Lisp, and it's called setQ, which is short for set equal. Okay. With setQ, you give it 2 arguments, usually. The first one is a variable name. So I'm going to call this page number. I like longer variable names because it's more descriptive. And I won't be confused, or someone else won't be confused when they see my code later. So I'm going to call it page number. And then for the second argument, I'm going to put in the value that I want to save in that variable name. Okay, so I'm going to put that whole getString thing in here. GetString, I'm going to shorten this, enter the page number, like that. And I have 2 close parentheses because I have to close both of these functions and tell Lisp that I'm done with them. So what's happening here? The way Lisp works, it always processes from the innermost thing first, right? So it's going to do the getString. It's going to ask me for a page number. I'm going to type in some page number, or the user is going to type in some page number. And this part that I have highlighted here will return the page number. And then the setQ is going to get processed, and it's going to store whatever that value is inside of this variable, page number. So the variable names don't have the double quotes because it's actually supposed to be processed by Lisp. It's actual code. You can think of it as actual code, whereas this is not actual code. It's actually data. It's text data, right? So you never want to try and put your variable names inside of double quotes, or it won't understand what you mean. So once I do this, I can hit enter, and it's again giving me the get string prompt. I'll type 5.01, enter. And then the set queue happened. It's just not telling you that it happened. There's no feedback, but it is telling you, the set queue is giving you a return value, which is the value of the thing that it's set, because everything in Lisp has to have a return value. So the way I can check if page number is actually storing the stuff that I typed out, on the command line, and this is only in the command line, this doesn't work, this is not actual Lisp code, but in the command line, you can type in an exclamation point and then a variable name, and then it should tell you what the value of that variable is. So you can see here, I typed in exclamation point page number, and out came the value that I typed in, 5.01. So this exclamation point thing is a pretty useful way to look at how your code is working, at least at the command line. Any questions about that? Set queue is very important. Saving variables is important, not just in Lisp, but in every programming language has some kind of mechanism like this. Most of them are identical to this. So it's important to understand what variables are. It's all about storing information that varies. It's almost like algebra, right? Where you're saying the function is x plus 1. X could be anything. Thing here, page number could be anything. And I'm just calling it, I'm storing it into a bucket named page number so that I can use it again later. All right. So the next thing is, so now I'm asking for the page number, I'm saving it in a variable. Now I need to have some way to change this text object so that it shows the page number that I typed in. And to do that in Lisp, the easiest way, there's many different ways to do this, but the easiest way is with the command function. So I'm going to do an open parentheses and command. And this is a function that just passes all the arguments directly to the command line in AutoCAD. So if I want AutoCAD to run the change command like I did with the script, which is how I'm going to do this, I can tell AutoCAD to send the word change to the command line. And I need the double quotes here because I don't want it to process change as a variable. I want it to be just the word change, the literal text change. I want you to send change. I want you to send some sort of coordinate point, which I'm just going to put as 0,0 for now. And then I want you to send an enter. So this is very similar to the script that we wrote. The script that we wrote had, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 enters before it started asking us for the new text. So I'm going to put 5 enters here. And to do enter, in Lisp, you could just give it what's called an empty string, which is just double quote and then another double quote right after that. So there's nothing in between the quotes here. Looks like I only, is that 5? Yeah, that's 5. And then I want to give it the variable, the value of the variable that I got earlier, which is page number. So I'll put space page number. And that's it. That's the end of the command, right? Now, I don't have the right coordinates yet, but this, in theory, would do it. I need to, let me try and, oh, it said I had an unstable connection there for a second. Everything okay? Thumbs up? I'm getting no thumbs up. Okay, I got one from John. Okay. So I need to get the coordinate of this thing, just like I did the last one. So I'm going to do ID. Yes, Ryan.
Is there spaces between the quotation or each set of quotations? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Between each argument, there needs to be a space.
Thank you.
So if these are all separate arguments, they need separate spaces between them all. Good question. Okay, so I ran the ID command and I clicked over on near my 1. so I can figure out what the coordinate is to pick that thing. So I can put that in the command line. Now, if you push up on the command line when there's nothing there, it's going to cycle through all the stuff that you typed in. See that? So you can get back to what you were typing in without having to retype the whole thing again. Unfortunately, I never ran that command line, so I'm going to have to type that out again. Command change. This time I'm going to put in the coordinates there. Again, I'm doing it in quotes because I just want the literal text to go through. I'm going to do 31.33, comma 0.7647, something like that. And then a series of 5 enters, all separated by spaces, and then the page number, which in this variable is the 5.01 that I got earlier. AutoLISP still remembers that variable from when we did it way back then, like 10 minutes ago. All right, I'll hit enter. Magic. It just changed that number without me having to do anything other than type in that code. Cool? That's the command function. So let's learn how to put that all together into some new command. So any questions? I heard Romy for a second. No? Okay. I'm going to go into my text editor. I'm going to make a whole new file. And I'm going to type out that code that I put in earlier.
Hey,
I had a set Q. Yes, Celine?
Yeah, sorry. When you hit the ID and pick the point of the insertion point, and where did you pick? Can you run the ID again?
Oh, yeah. I just ran the ID command like that. And then I put my mouse over here so that it would select that one text object.
Oh, so it doesn't matter.
And then when I click there, it gives me the point. It's
Oh,
very helpful to make your your command line a little bigger. I know by default it's like this or something, and it's like auto hiding and all this weird stuff. If you just drag it to make it bigger, then you can see what's going on.
mhm.
You'll notice when I'm using AutoCAD, I always have my command line like this, so I can do these kind of things.
So you just
But you could just move that up and down.
So you just pick the content. The
So
center of
I
the
saw
content.
yeah, or wherever you would put your mouse to select this one, right? It could be up here, could be over here. All you're doing is you're telling AutoCAD that I want you to put the mouse here and click when it's asking to select objects.
Okay. Okay, got it.
And then I just translated these XY coordinates into inches so that it wouldn't be as weird. But you can, I think, literally just type out. You're gonna stumble on this double quote because it's gonna get confused with the string. But you can do it without the double quote. Just say 2'-7.3426. You could type it out just like that. Anything that works in the command line would work.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so back to my code. Thanks, Celine. So I'm putting in this text file all the Lisp stuff that I typed out before. Enter in the page number, like that, with the set Q. And then after that, we did command change some coordinates that I don't remember off the top of my head. I'm going to push up on my keyboard here to get to this. I could just copy this from the command line. It's one of the nice things about Lisp is that you can do stuff like that. Try it out on the command line first. See how it's going to work. See if it will work. And then put it into a text file to make your final Lisp command. Okay, so I'm going to put a few blank lines above this. What I need to do is define this as a command for AutoCAD. So there's a function for that, just like everything in Lisp. And it's called defun, which is short for define function. And the first argument is the name of the function. So I'm going to do this sneaky little thing, C:(NP). Now, the command name that I want is NP, and C:" tells that I want this to be a quote-unquote command that you type out in AutoCAD to do this function. So the second argument to the defun is usually just some empty parentheses like this. And I'm not going to talk about what those are for, but they have to be there. That's for a little more advanced situations. Yes, Sahar?
Okay, so this, when we typed in setQ and we typed in page number.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I was gonna ask how it knows what page number is, but then that's the next line we wrote, right? Where we're saying change the item at this coordinate point.
Well, this, are you talking about this part? Right, this is the Getstring. This is the function that asks the user what the page number is. We're taking the value of that and storing it into this variable called page number. And then later on during this command, we're bringing back the page number from memory and putting it at this point in the command after the enters.
So we're saying
kind of how that
you
works.
can enter in a value for page number, but we're also defining page number by something that's at this coordinate point.
Yeah, you have to separate what the what your program needs to run, and then what you're trying to get out of it, right? This is a text object in AutoCAD, right? So our command is asking for a page number that we type in, and then it's going to go find this text object and change it so that its text value is whatever we typed in. So we're doing those in those two steps. We're asking the user for the page number, we're storing it as some variable named page number, and then we're running some AutoCAD commands to change the value of the text in AutoCAD to the page number that we typed out.
Okay, so could
Like
you
this
change
doesn't have to be
something?
called page number. This could be called X. Like if you're into algebra, they always use X. Like if I called this variable X is going to contain the page number that the user typed in when they run this command. So I want to put an X right here so that that page number is the one that is put into the change command when it runs.
Okay, so when you run the change
make
command,
sense?
it's just recognizing that that's a text at this coordinate point. It's just
Yeah,
finding
when I
whatever
put in this
object.
coordinate point to exactly this, I'm typing into the command line a coordinate that where that text object should be sitting.
Okay,
I
gotcha.
mean, if you have a different title block, that number would be completely different, right?
Right, yeah. Okay, gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Okay, let me change these back. All right. So I did defun, the name of the command. I put C:" to tell AutoCAD that it's a command. I have empty parentheses here, which I'm not going to talk about. And then you put in the rest of your code. This is all the stuff that I want it to run when I run the NP command. And then at the very end, I want to close the parenthesis. I want to close the defun parenthesis. So one of the challenges, especially when you're learning Lisp, is that all your open parentheses need to be closed. And they can't just be closed anytime. They have to be closed at the right time. So I have this get string here is surrounded by parentheses, right? So get string starts with this open parenthesis and ends with this closed parenthesis. The setQ over here starts with this parenthesis and ends with this parenthesis. Command starts with this parenthesis and ends with this one. And then defun even starts with this parenthesis and ends with this one. So everything is closed. Okay, so we're going to save this, save as. I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. Put it in the same folder. This time I'm going to call it my command.lsp. LSP is the file extension for Lisp code, as far as AutoCAD's concerned. There's a few others you can use, but they're not direct Lisp code. So .lsp, save. All right, so there's a couple ways you can load that code into your AutoCAD session. My favorite is appload, A-P-P-L-O-A-D, appload. So in here, it should pop up with a little dialog box like this, and you can browse directly to your file that you made. Where is mine? It's in source repos. Lesson 1, my command here, and hit load, and then it should load into AutoCAD. Oh, I'm using 2020, so it's going to ask me like security questions. I'm going to say yes, always load, because it's an unknown publisher. That's a whole nother story. And it says down here, my command.lsp successfully loaded. If you want it to always load whenever you open AutoCAD or open a different drawing, you can go over here to the startup suite and go to contents. And then that pops up this little dialog where you can add permanently this my command.lsp so that it loads when you start AutoCAD, and every single drawing that you open will load this thing. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to load it there. Hit close, hit close. So now it's loaded. So like I said, you just type in NP for the command, and you can even see that it helps you in the command line. He is an actual registered command with AutoCAD. And I'll hit enter, and now it's running my code. Enter in the page number, 5.01. I hit enter, and bam, it updated the page. Cool. So I'm gonna run on to go to the next file. I could have saved it, but I didn't bother. Here's my next page. I don't even have to see the page back there. You can kind of see it ghosted. Oh, you can see it over here. It's a 1. I could just run my np command and do 5.01a, which is what this sheet is. I can look up here and see that I'm on that file. Hit enter, done. Save it, move on, kind of thing. So I automated out the clicking, the text editing, all that stuff. And now it's just ask me a question and go do it. Any questions on that? We're almost out of time, which is perfect. This is exactly where I wanted to be. This was the whole class. We're not cutting it short. Unlike the escape room, this one finished in time. Cool. So that's your first custom AutoCAD command. Yes, Sahar.
Okay, so after I load it, and then I type in, like, say I named it something, and then I typed it in CAD. What if it's like, what if there's other commands with the same?
Yeah, your Lisp, whatever gets loaded last is the one that wins. So before I wrote this whole thing, I made sure that NP didn't mean anything in AutoCAD before I went off and named this command NP. So like CO usually is the copy command in AutoCAD, I believe. So if you name your command CO and you run it, it's like the definition that CO is copy, and it will run your code instead. So try not to do that.
So whatever file name you
Otherwise,
save it
someone who
as,
sits at your computer and tries to use your AutoCAD. Oh, the file name doesn't matter. So the name of the command, like I named my file my command.lsp. The command name is right here. It's part of the defun statement. NP is the name of my command, and then the C colon says that I want this function to be a Lisp command. So you should be typing NP to run it, not the file name. Because you can have a bunch of different commands in here. You can have say you wanted to be able to run this same command by typing in P, something like that, or number, page, like that. You can do it this way. I mean, I don't recommend it, but you can have multiple commands defined in the same file. You load the file once, and now you have access to a bunch of commands.
Okay.
All right.
So I have another question.
Cool.
I have another question. So
can we do Carla and Michelle first? Since...
Oh yeah, sorry.
Oh, can we do Carla and Michelle first because they came up too? Just we'll do turns. We'll take turns. Carla.
I think Michelle was here first, so she should ask first.
Okay, fine. Michelle first.
Okay, thanks, Carla. Just a question. So right now, to finish the defund function, is there a reason on line 5 we have to put that enter there before we close that function?
Oh, no.
No.
None of this white space matters. Okay. So it could be like that. It could all be on one line. It could be like this. Like you could collapse it all into one gigantic line with a bunch of spaces. It just makes it easier to read. Okay. Usually if I was doing this for real, I would have these indented like that. And I might even, and you'll see this in the solution that I gave you. I would do something like this, because this helps you line up your parentheses. Like I can see that this parenthesis and this parenthesis are matching pair. This one and this one are a matching pair, that kind of thing. So you can format your code so that you can easily see that things are lined up and all that kind of stuff. Makes it a little easier to read, but yeah, it's all optional.
That it meant something, and like if you didn't put it, it would.
As long as there is a space there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not that strict.
Thanks.
There doesn't have to be a space there at all. Even like it could just be like, yeah, just like that. It's just not clear where defund ends when you do it like that. But if you put it on its own line or separate it out with an extra line like that, it's a little more clear to everyone that's reading it.
Got it. Okay.
Good question. Carla?
Mine is more of a technical question, I guess. When I do NP, it like it says that it was loaded successfully when I did upload, and then when I exit, it says error malformed list on input, and then I do NP.
Yeah, you must be. That usually means that you're missing a parenthesis. You're missing a closed parenthesis or an open parenthesis or something like that. So make sure all your parentheses have closings.
Okay.
And also all your quotes are also closed. So your quote here should be closed there, you know, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, I'll double check.
Because if you're missing one of these, like this one here might be one that you're missing. I'm trying to use my psychic powers. You know, that's why I'm using Visual Studio Code, because it colors things so I can tell. Like if I miss this, it's gonna change everything. Like all the colors change because I'm missing a closed quote.
Okay.
So that helps.
I'll look it over. Thanks.
All right, and if you can't find where it is, I can look at your code later.
Okay. Thanks, Zach.
Sahar, and then Saul.
Okay, so I could technically write something where it's running I create the command and then it runs the command, or I create the command in a separate file and then I can run multiple commands like you said. So I can basically
and they can all call each other too.
Okay. So that's how we run something on multiple files.
Yeah, like for something you guys are all kind of familiar with is all the Autocad tools. Most of those are defined in one Lisp file. It's called capstock.lsp. I think it gets compiled for you guys, so you don't see it as .lsp, you see it as VLX in your wwcad folder. But it has all the commands in there for the revision clouds. It has all the commands for the break shape generator, the parts program. Well, no, not the parts program. Never mind. It has bscript in there. It has the batch plot is in there. Like all of those commands are all defined in one file, one Lisp file. that gets loaded automatically because it's part of your acad.lsp, which AutoCAD always loads. So yeah, and all of them can call each other, and you can call them too. Like I can use the Lisp function for bscript or batch print, which is C:\plotter, and call the actual command directly using Lisp like that, and see how it starts batch plot. So there's like all of Lisp is shared on everything in AutoCAD, and you can call in my code, you can call in your own code, all that, all kinds of possibilities. Saul,
Hey Zach,
you're muted. Okay,
yeah.
there you go.
So you say like we're able to download Visual Studio, which one, which version? The community?
Visual Studio Code.
Yes.
Visual Studio Code.
Code. Okay.
Not Visual Studio. That's a different thing.
Oh,
Visual
okay.
Studio Code.
Where?
Yeah, I'll go to the website.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Visual Studio Code. Do a search for it like that. It'll be code.visualstudio.com. And then there's a button right there to download for Windows, and you can install that. I tried it yesterday. It didn't ask me any sort of admin questions, so it should work for you guys.
Okay, I'll try. Thank you.
And this, by the way, Visual Studio Code is used by almost everyone that writes code. Nice. Like it's completely taken over. People are making webs with it. People are writing, like I wouldn't not be surprised if they're using it in Microsoft to write Windows itself. Like it's just that huge. So you're up with the big dogs if you're using this thing. Any other questions? I think Catan had his hand up, but it disappeared. I don't even know if he's in this room. All right, guys. Like I said, you can go to my GitHub site, or I guess it's the Walters and Wolf GitHub site. It's the only one that I know of. Walters and Wolf Glass, and download the repository using that green button. Go to AutoLISP lessons, go over here to code, and you can download a zip file of the whole thing. Inside of here, you'll find the code that I wrote, but it's all decorated and stuff. So here's the script that I made that you get. It has my initials in it. Probably should have put something else there. And then I also have this version of the Lisp code where I write what are called comments everywhere, describing each step of the code. And it's all indented, so it's a little easier to follow, like a paragraph after each line of code. So you can follow along there. Hopefully that helps you guys out. You can also use this this end file, which is Markdown. It's a whole nother story with that one, which describes everything that we went over here today in depth. Probably some stuff in here that I didn't go over, but I went over most of this, all these different functions. Oh, I didn't go over that function, but you can try that out. And follow along, try and do this yourself. And yeah, Lisp is this is how I started learning code. I learned Lisp a long time ago. If you saw my little interview video, it was my very first programming language. And like I said in that video, once you learn the concepts of one programming language, it's really easy to start moving into other programming languages because they all have similar concepts. They may have some differences, like nuanced differences or slightly new features or different features, but the main things are the same. There's always going to be variables. There's always going to be like if statements and that kind of thing, functions, all that stuff. So Lisp is a great place to start. You may get fed up with the parentheses. That's why there are other languages than Lisp, and none of them have parentheses. So you can identify Lisp very quickly with these parentheses because they're everywhere. But yeah, it's a great place to start learning how to code, and I still use it all the time. Most of the AutoCAD tools that you use are written in Lisp. The parts program is all Lisp. The batch plot, it's all Lisp. Break shape commands, the hatching commands, the dimension commands, all the callout bubbles, all of that stuff is Lisp. There are other ways to write code in AutoCAD, but Lisp is the oldest and one of the most powerful ones. So it's a really great place to start to learn how to code. That's all I had for today. Thank you very much. Sorry we went over. Enjoy what remains of the conference, if we're calling it that now. Thanks, guys. Did you figure out your issue?